ruling was that Congress did not confer authority on courts to issue these nationwide injunctions, but only to give relief to the parties before them. Obviously, if it's a large class action, then the entire class action can be benefited. But according to the majority's reading of history, which is contestable, that the equity jurisdiction of the courts never extended that far, and the court seemingly brushed to the side cases in the past where courts had issued nationwide injunctions. But again, I think the most important part is that the court did not in any way defend President Trump's view of birthright citizenship. That'll be decided, it has been decided against President Trump in many district courts, and my guess is it will continue to be decided against him. But it's incumbent now upon every plaintiff through a class action or other kinds of means to go to court to vindicate his or her rights.
And what's sort of ironic is that the Supreme Court has been cutting back on class actions in various ways through the years. The Justice Amy Coney Barrett wrote the opinion of the court, and she said, the government's applications to partially stay the preliminary injunctions are granted, but only to the extent that the injunctions are broader than necessary to provide complete relief to each plaintiff with standing to sue. So they're sending it back to the lower courts. I mean, what does she mean by that?
I think she just means that that each court is to determine who has standing, and there was another concurrence questioning whether third parties like states can sue on behalf of their citizens, and so it's incumbent then upon each court to decide who has standing to raise the birthright issue. And then an injunction is appropriate with respect to those people that have standing. I mean, the consequence to me is, what about a million-person strong class action? I think that is possible. That seems to me to be within the spirit of what the court is suggesting. And now the real battle, as you suggest, will be on whether you can have million-person strong class actions. I think you can under the precedence of the court, and I think that's probably will be the reaction to what the court has decided today.
And so how much of a win is this for the Trump administration?
I think it's a win not for the Trump administration per se, but for executive power. There's an imbalance of power between presidents, which can take actions nationally. And what the court is saying is even though presidents can take action nationally through executive orders, as in this case, or through other means, that the courts cannot respond nationally to that kind of presidential initiative. So there is an imbalance now, and the shift towards presidential power is greater. I don't think it's per se a Trump administration victory, but it certainly is one for presidential power overall.
So the 6-3 decision, so 3 dissents from the 3 liberal justices. Why was this an issue that went down ideological lines? I mean, you can understand that in cases involving LGBTQ rights or things like that, but why here?
I think here, because in this sense, normally the correct course of action for the government to take would be to ask for a stay of the injunction while the case is being litigated. That is the typical response. The government didn't do that here on purpose, because to show a stay, one has to show to get a stay, one has to show a likelihood of success on the merits. And the government wanted to avoid having any kind of discussion of the merits because it has presumably because it has such a weak position in this case. So it took the other attack, instead of trying to get a stay, of saying that the injunction isn't valid from the beginning. And I think that is a sort of a very obviously other jurisdictions, other governments, other administrations have railed against universal injunctions as well, such as the Biden administration. But I think this becomes then a conservative liberal because of the context of the case, seeing it's not a stay, but rather it's an unusual attack on judicial power from the outset. Plus, as the dissent said, equity means you have to be flexible. You have to evolve with changing conditions. And so this nationwide injunction becomes an important tool for the judiciary. So that becomes then a more conservative liberal divide.